Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. My name is Russell Brooks, tonight's host of Inside Scoop. Tonight's program focuses on the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, and our guest is Aaron Yohai, the chairman of the county party. Aaron Yohai is a Democratic Party activist born and raised in Northern Virginia, where he attended school and graduated from George Mason University in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in government and international politics. Before graduating, Aaron worked in voter registration and as a field organizer on multiple successful campaigns for the Virginia State Legislature, believing that progressive change required ground-up mobilization of voters. In 2019, Aaron was elected chair of the Braddock District Democratic Committee, serving for 4 years, and in 2022 he ran for and won a seat on the 11th District Democratic Committee and the Democratic Party of Virginia State Central Committee. In 2024, he was elected chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, the largest Democratic Party organization in Virginia. According to Aaron, his most meaningful and fulfilling project is his current job as legislative aide to State Delegate Vivian Watts, for whom he has worked since 2018. As the lone aide to Delegate Watts, Aaron serves the 14th District, which is centered on the incredibly diverse and dynamic community of Annandale, Aaron's hometown since childhood. Aaron, welcome to Inside Scoop. Let's begin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. You've been involved in politics for a very long time. What motivated you to pursue this particular career?
Well, I guess it all started in around middle school when I was required to do service hours as part of the curriculum, and I chose to do that as by kind of providing public service announcements to my neighborhood, just my limited block, about the issue of recycling and how we can help the environment by providing or by making sure that we're always recycling correctly, and I would send out a flyer to all the homes and sometimes give examples of what not to recycle and what to recycle, all in the hopes of helping the environment. Now, that was in 2007, so right around the corner was the financial crisis, and these issues often have to do with one another in our world. Getting collective action, such as recycling, to achieve a policy end was a very small part of the battle I learned. And getting involved in the 2008 presidential election was really my foray. I chose to stick with it, and in 2016, I studied abroad because I kind of felt that our domestic situation was looking very good in the United States with President Obama at the helm, and had an interest in foreign affairs before Trump was elected in 2016. And then that changed everything, and I felt I really need to have my feet on the ground here in Virginia, in my community of Fairfax County, and that's what brought me here today.
Interesting. Who were your political heroes growing up?
Well, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention Barack Obama, who has had a tremendous impact on me personally. He became president when I was still a freshman in high school, actually. So my formative years, you could say, were in the shadow of the Bush administration, and then the hope and change of the Obama years. I can't ever let go of that impression that made on me. So I would definitely say that Barack Obama is a political hero of mine, but I would also throw the name out of Lyndon Johnson. I really admire his signature legislative achievements were, of course, the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, but also the Great Society. And I'm going to be a little reductionist. My high school history teacher would probably say that I know more about this maybe 10 years ago or earlier, but we saw the largest decrease in poverty in American history in the decade of the 1960s as a result of Johnson's programs. And that is the kind of political leadership that I would love to see for the future, is just a really robust domestic program that helps people and moves the country forward in a strong way, and we can work towards that.
Those are some interesting choices based on what you've encountered, based on what you've read. What makes a good or great political leader?
Well, I really admire my boss, Delegate Vivian Watts, who has one of her favorite books is The 5 Rules of Politics, which began as the 3 rules put forward by Everett Dirksen, I think is the name, who, slightly reductive again, he said the 3 rules are get elected, get reelected, and don't get mad, get even. And then when he saw those 3 rules, again, we're at President Johnson, Lyndon Johnson said, I'm going to add 2 more at the beginning. Lyndon Johnson's additions were show up to meetings and pay your dues. So what does that mean? For a state delegate like Vivian Watts, who has been my delegate for almost my whole life, actually, because I grew up in Annandale, where she represents, I think that the most important thing is, well, paying your dues and showing up, certainly something that she did, being involved in the community for a long time as a citizen activist before being elected. There's really no substitute for knowing the community that you're going to be representing and making decisions for. And then she has kind of put her own spin on the first 3 rules. She says serve and don't get mad, get things done. That was often a challenge when you've been in the minority in the Virginia legislature for 20 years, like she was, super minority actually, where we had less than 34 seats out of 100. It was often quite hard to get things done and have something to show for your service. And it was under such circumstances that she has had a tremendous legislative record, including she.
Well, let me
sure
sort of build on that a little bit. I don't have to tell you this, but there's a lot of cynicism among the general public as it relates to politics and politicians. They believe politicians can't be trusted. They believe corruption fuels politics. But I suspect your experience might be a bit different. Can you tell me about that experience, and what do you believe motivates most politicians?
Well, I think that for starters, what people often hear about is the battles that take place on Capitol Hill or in Richmond, and they would perhaps be surprised to learn that more bills are heard by the Virginia State Legislature in 2 months than Congress hears in a whole year. And of all those bills, most of them pass uncontested. So there's a lot that we do agree on. And when you're in the trenches, learning how policy is made and seeing these people working hard in committees and subcommittees to come up with solutions to problems and not just playing partisan games, you come to realize that there really is a dedication to policy and improving the lives of Virginians. And I love working in the state legislature because these are laws that are going to affect Americans and Virginians more than anything else.
Now, as a county chair, you know that fundraising is just crucial to politics in America. It is so important, but nevertheless, I believe a lot of politicians wish they didn't have to devote so much time to fundraising. Must it be this way?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I think Virginia, it's certainly the Wild West. We could, if I can insert my own personal views here, we could see some welcome campaign finance reform in Virginia, but it is unfortunate that they have to spend so much time raising money. I think that is a little reductive still, because being a legislator, being in public service is a year-round job. I think that many legislators are in service despite the demands on their time, despite the requirements that they be constantly fundraising. They are making a strong effort to meet with constituents wherever they can. That's actually one of Vivian's 5 rules, is serving and meeting with our community and understanding their needs.
So I think you're suggesting that despite the cynicism that we hear so often, for most, maybe not all, but for most, service is still what really drives them to pursue this particular career.
Absolutely.
Which definitely has its challenges, whether it's being constantly in the public eye and sort of always being, I guess, subject to criticism, but nevertheless they do it. And why do they do it? It sounds as if they do it because they're really committed to public service.
I would agree with that.
But I don't want to speak for you.
No, I think you put it very well.
Okay. Back to your reading habits. Were there particular political biographies that impressed you?
You know, Russell, I don't have a whole lot of time for pleasure reading anymore, unfortunately. I wish I did. I know that there's a book that's collecting dust on my nightstand. It was a gift to me from my mom, Bagman by Rachel Maddow, about the scandals of the Nixon administration. That's on my list. A couple more probably on my list, including a biography of Theodore Roosevelt that I haven't cracked open yet, but I will. Would love to go more down that path, but perhaps I should return to who my heroes are. And I did read, now that I think about it, I read Audacity of Hope many years ago, when after the election of Obama, actually, and perhaps I'll return to that and check out a couple of his others. Dreams from My Father, I think, is one that I haven't had a look at.
Yeah, that was actually his first one. But I'm actually surprised you didn't mention the great series on Lyndon Johnson by Robert Caro, which tells the entire story of how Lyndon Johnson, who came from very humble roots, rose to become, well, first the majority leader in the Senate and then, of course, president. It's a fascinating series and actually a fantastic tome of literature.
Do you think I should move that to the front of the queue?
I'm not ever going to say that you should move anyone ahead of Barack Obama.
Fair enough.
On the other hand, it is a great series of books, and I think you, as a person who is interested in the career of Lyndon Johnson, will certainly enjoy it.
Thank you.
Well, it appears that we're going to have to take a break for a moment. So thank you for those comments, but we're going to have to pause our conversation for a short break. So for the audience, please stay with us, and we'll be back shortly with more Inside Scoop and our special guest, Aaron Yohai.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. Already posted it.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But I was scared of all that I could do was remember you. You know I usually say no, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes. I mean,
Right.
like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi, I'm Russell Brooks, tonight's host, and we are back with our special guest, Yohai, the chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Let's continue. The Democratic Party suffered a major defeat at the polls on November 5th, losing the presidency, the U.S. Senate, and failing to take back control of the U.S. House of Representatives. I have to ask, what do you think led to these results?
Well, I think that we had two big problems looking back, and it's easy to get swept up in the enthusiasm that I felt, certainly from Democrats in the waning days of the election. But when we take a step back and look at the full picture, it was really hard for our candidates up and down the ballot to escape the shadow of the current administration, and I wouldn't say necessarily the unpopularity of the president, but frustration at the current state of affairs. And that's never a good thing for the incumbent party. But beyond that, we have a lot of improving that we need to do on messaging and what we're saying. And I think part of this was Vice President Harris, like I said, had to escape that shadow, and she only had 4 months to do it. And that's just not an easy thing to do for anybody in 4 months. Had she had the opportunity to run in an open primary and make sure that the American people knew who she was many months before, I think it might have been a different situation, and that certainly didn't help with our messaging struggles. I think we were just on the back foot the whole time, and in the future we need to be really going at these important issues for Americans, kitchen table issues, and sharing what our plans are.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. Now, as you know, there's a lot of discussion taking place about what could have done, should have been done, etc. Within the national media, so much of that discussion is focused on whether the party has drifted too far to the left, at least in the minds of voters. What do you think?
I don't accept that premise. I think that left and center is not really the problem that we have. I think the problem is, are we speaking to issues of importance to Americans? And people want to hear what our plans and our ideas are. They're not judging everything by, oh, that's too far, unless that's the narrative that we're putting out there, and that's a shame. I would say that a somewhat distressing narrative that I've heard emerge from all of this has been, do we go too far on certain issues like trans rights, for example? And I don't think that the Democratic Party should ever be letting a group down that's in our coalition. We should never be looking at people's basic rights and saying, have we gone too far when it comes to basic rights? That's not who we are. So with that in mind, I would hesitate to ever say that we are going too far in standing up for what's right on principles, but we can message these issues of interest to Americans and Virginians.
Understandable. As I said, that's the national discussion that's taking place. But what are you seeing on the local level? Are there similar conversations, disputes, arguments taking place, or not?
In my assessment of what voters in Fairfax County were thinking, I think that we win on all the issues, but it's not just a discussion of what passes muster in Fairfax County, because we had to really turn out in droves for Democratic candidates. And that is always a challenge in Fairfax, that getting 60% of the vote for Democrats in Fairfax is not enough. We should be aiming for 70% of the vote in Fairfax County. And how we do that has more dominated the discussion locally, I'd say, than what we were saying. We need to do a better job of messaging to contingents of our Democratic Party, our own Democratic coalition, as well as just members of the community here in a diverse urban county.
So with that in mind, were you pleased with how the party organization performed here in Fairfax County in the most recent election?
Yes, I was very pleased with what we've done. I think that we focus on the fundamentals very well. We made sure that every voter who wanted one had a Democratic sample ballot in their hand. I think that this year's Democratic coordinated campaign in Virginia was one of the strongest I've ever seen from the top down, and they did a great job of hiring organizers who were already very familiar with Virginia. That goes a very long way, but there's always room for improvement, and I think that our Democratic candidates as well as party leaders are looking hard at ourselves and saying, what can we do better to message what we're offering to voters? And that's where we should be.
So let me press you on that a little bit. Where are these areas of concern or areas for improvement?
I would have to look more closely at the precinct level data, and certainly there's been a lot said already. But for example, I see that we have a wider appeal than ever before, but we haven't necessarily built on what we were able to accomplish, say, inside the Beltway where our precincts are very blue. I'll elaborate. I believe this year we won Fairfax Station precinct for the first time in a very long time. Fairfax Station never votes for Democrats, and this year we broke that mold. So that shows a definitely growing appeal of the Democratic Party. But on the flip side, and again, I'd like to deep dive into the data and really understand it, we seem to be underperforming in population centers, such as inside the Beltway. And I would like to work with next year's campaigns and our party leaders to have a plan to go after voters where they are. And we can be satisfied that we're performing well in the fundamentals of knocking on doors and making phone calls, writing postcards, and making sure that every voter has a Democratic sample ballot in their hands. But we need to get creative about how we reach people digitally and on the airwaves. I think that we are up against a robust Republican media ecosystem, and it's really hard for us to break away from that. They are kind of running the board there.
Okay, I think that sort of leads into my next question, because as you know, Fairfax County is increasingly diverse. I think especially among its Latino and Asian American populations, and at least nationally, again, Democrats have sort of lost some of their support among those populations. Has the Fairfax County Democratic Committee seen a similar drop-off in support from these populations, at least that you've noticed?
Yes, I think so. But I wouldn't say that it goes beyond the national trends that we've observed or even the regional trends in Northern Virginia. Every suburban locality in Northern Virginia saw a decrease in Democratic performance uniformly, even though we still carried the state by a significant margin and carry these localities by significant margins. That speaks to some loss of support, and what we need to be focusing on is understanding the issues that matter to these populations and then again meeting them where they are. And we've seen Republicans invest in urban core and suburban communities and outreach to Spanish-speaking and Asian communities, and we need to be meeting and exceeding that outreach, and that is an area for improvement, absolutely.
Okay, understandable. Another concern that members of these communities state is they only hear from politicians or their political campaigns around election time. Now, to some degree, in Virginia, we maybe differ from that a bit, in that every year is election year in the Commonwealth. But nevertheless, I think the criticism may be fair in that they believe they want to hear or see more consistent and constant interaction with not only their elected officials, but I would say probably with their party officials. They want to be brought into the party. Would you agree? What could be done to address those concerns?
Well, you bring up the fact that we have elections every year in Virginia, and in some cases that is a blessing, but it's also a curse in that we seem to be changing the topic every year. we go from a federal election year to suddenly everything being about state and local politics in a year such as 2025 coming right up, and we're forced to change gears. And then come the midterms in 2026, we're going to be talking about federal government again, and people are going to have whiplash, although that's not entirely true. I'm fearful, as a matter of fact, that a lot of these federal changes that we're going to see under the Trump administration will have a huge impact locally and in Virginia, such as expected federal job losses. I think
Also, at least some claim that there's not much difference these days between the local issues and the national issues when everything appears to be so nationalized. You know, Democrats are criticized for what they do on a national basis. Republicans are, to some degree, reaping the benefits of Trump's popularity on the local level. In that case, is there a major difference between what's local and what's national?
I think that in the case of the federal workforce and its impact on Northern Virginia and the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, they're going to be very much the same sooner than we all think. I was very disturbed that Hung Cao, who ran for the Virginia Senate this year, signed on to Donald Trump's plan, which was to relocate a significant portion of the federal workforce out of the DC metro area elsewhere, which would be devastating to the Virginia economy. And that is an unavoidable topic of discussion next year.
I'd agree. Also, if this program of mass deportation takes place, without a doubt, that will affect members of our local population. Even if people don't quite realize it right now, without a doubt, that has to have some impact upon our social situation, upon our economy here.
You know, I think it's important that we expose right here and right now that the mass deportation policies of Donald Trump are based on lies. And first and foremost, that immigrants are taking jobs from Americans. When just a couple years ago, we were talking about labor shortages and how things have changed. Suddenly, immigrants are the enemy again? I don't think so. I'm very distressed by that. I think about how my family, like many Americans, I'm descended from immigrants and refugees, and how they had to enter the country, in my grandfather's case, under a fake name because they were afraid of being turned away due to the National Origins Act and just anti-Semitism perhaps. And then on the other side of my family, my mom's side, my grandmother has never forgiven the Democratic Party, despite the fact that she herself holds very liberal views. She was a lifelong Republican because Franklin Roosevelt turned away refugees from Europe in the 40s.
Well, I think it's time for another short break, so please stay tuned to this discussion about the state of Fairfax County Democrats when we return with more Inside Scoop.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, I'm Josh Temple. You might have seen me on TV where I help folks turn their houses into dream homes. But forget construction. Parenting is the toughest job there is. So when you need help or advice, turn to the parenting experts at Boys Town.
I was afraid of that.
Well, guess it's time to get you fixed.
Your pets will start fooling around sooner than you think.
Go on, get out of here!
Accidental litters lead to millions killed in shelters each year. Help prevent more. Fix at month 4.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy! And refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodssafety.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi, I'm Russell Brooks, tonight's host, and again, we're back with our special guest, Aaron Yohai, Chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Again, we're having a great discussion about the politics in Fairfax County, and 2025 is shaping up to be an important year for Democrats in Virginia and elsewhere to demonstrate that they are ready to make a comeback. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. I think that we are having a huge surge in interest. At our last countywide meeting, we had maybe a dozen new members who showed up that no one had ever heard from before, and I expect that we're going to have dozens more at our next meeting that we will process as new members. But I am sensing all over Virginia, really, that there is a huge appetite for change, especially from the current governor's administration.
Speaking of the current governor, or should I say the governor's race, the candidates appear to be clear. Spanberger for the Democrats, more than likely Sears for the Republicans. But what issues do you believe is going to animate the race to be the next governor?
Well, I think that the issues that are going to often be at the forefront are, as they often are in the past, the economy, healthcare, and choice. In the latter case, that's going to be an issue that affects many Virginians directly. At the state level, the laws are kind of the last line of defense between there being any reproductive choice at all and not. And that's a frightening proposition for a lot of Virginians. But also to circle back to something we discussed before, Russell, the federal job losses that Donald Trump and his folks in Washington are going to be talking about and are already discussing are going to be devastating to Virginia's economy. Someone like Abigail Spanberger, who has a background in delivering results for Virginia, especially in workplace preparedness, and her record of working across the aisle to accomplish these things, is going to be a strong foil to Republicans who I challenge to join with us on saying no to federal job losses in Virginia.
You also mentioned choice, and I believe in the next legislative session, there will be a call to revise the state constitution to guarantee a woman's right to choose here in Virginia. Will that be one of those issues that will animate the governor's race?
Absolutely. I think that is unavoidable, but it should be noted that the governor has no say over constitutional amendments in our process for Virginia. That falls on the General Assembly, and the entire House of Delegates is up for re-election next year. We have a Democratic majority now. I expect that they will pass the reproductive rights amendment and to pass it again next year as is required to change the Constitution. We will have to hold on and expand our Democratic majority. I think that we are up to the task.
Okay. In addition to the contest for governor, there's going to be important contests among the races to be Attorney General or to be Lieutenant Governor. Among Democrats, there seem to be some primary races developing. Do you expect the issues in those races to be much different than what we're talking about for governor?
I expect that they will be very much the same, but with a different texture. For example, whoever our Lieutenant Governor nominee will be, they have to demonstrate not only that they're on the right side of these issues, but that they will be a strong governing partner with the Democratic governor. And as a ticket, they have to present demographic as well as geographic diversity, because Virginia is a big state, and we've got people from Richmond, South Side, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads in the southeast, and the Valley. It's a big state that needs to be represented. They can't all be from the same place. So I'll look forward to diversity on that front. For the Attorney General primary, I think that they have a slightly more set rubric where they have the legacy of 8 years of impeccable leadership by Mark Herring that was then turned around by our current Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares running for re-election. So they have to demonstrate not only that they're on the right side of these issues, but that they have the technical know-how to take back control of the Attorney General's office and make it work for Virginians again.
Okay. What will be your role as the county chair in maybe ensuring that there's an even playing field for the Democrats who are interested in these positions?
Well, the best role for the county chair is also the best role for the county party, which is to say we're not going to tell the voters whom they should vote for. Leave that to the Democratic primary voters, but we have a role for the general election, and that's the same role that we always have, which is to elect Democrats. And to that end, we're going to work hard to amplify the message of our Democratic candidates and make sure that those fundamentals are strong, the knocking on doors, the writing of postcards, the placing of phone calls, and handing out Democratic sample ballots. That's what they're depending on us to do. And we can workshop around some newer ideas about how we can get into some communities and amplify our message more there as well.
It must be really tough to energize and mobilize the Democratic voters basically on an annual basis. So am I wrong? Is this difficult? And if it is, what works to get people to come out year after year?
It is difficult, Russell. It is a tough thing to have every year be the most important election of our lifetimes, but here we are. As far as motivating people, I think that really just gets back to the issue of messaging to them where they are, issues of importance, kitchen table issues. When they begin to understand what the stakes are next year, I think that will have the strongest impact on mobilizing folks.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we can even focus on the important race for governor and those other races we mentioned, lieutenant governor, attorney general, there are a few seats up for grabs almost immediately in Loudoun County. Why are these seats important for Democrats? And is there anything that you'd recommend that committed Democrats do to support their candidates in those races?
The stakes have never been higher. As a matter of fact, we have zero room for error. We have to win both of the special elections in Loudoun County because we are one seat away from losing our majority in both the House and the Senate. If we want to see significant progress in the legislature next year, we have to hold on to both seats. To that end, I encourage anyone who's listening to visit fairfaxdemocrats.org, and you'll see on our website links to get involved in the campaigns of Kanan Srinivasan for the state Senate and J.J. Singh for the House of Delegates. I myself will be venturing out there soon enough with a clipboard. I hope to knock on doors before I'm required in Richmond again, but we've got to.
Now, you mentioned your work in Richmond, where you must see a range of Democratic and Republican office holders. And I guess oftentimes they work better together, you suggested, than we might imagine. And certainly if we want to get more accomplished, they're going to have to work together. So based on your experience, again, what's the best way of getting folks to do that?
Isn't that a good question, Russell? I would say that they are doing about as well as they can working across the aisle right now, given our polarization. The divisions within the party, geographically, the needs of say, Hampton Roads versus Northern Virginia are something where it requires strong leadership to keep our caucus together. And I'm really thankful for the leadership of Don Scott, Speaker of the House, and Charnel Herring, our majority leader, and caucus chair Kathy Tran, who bring us all together as a Democratic caucus at least, and make sure that we are working together and getting things done in a way that helps everybody and not just one region.
Now, in Fairfax County, traditionally a blue area, I have to imagine the issues or difficulties that Democratic chairs in more rural counties face are quite different than yours. Do you get together with them and sort of discuss what works, what isn't working, what we could do, what Democrats could do better in terms of reaching out to those rural communities?
Every so often, I do bump into people in Richmond and we have an exchange of ideas. You brought up an interesting point about the difference between the challenges that Fairfax County faces versus other localities that are not dependably Democratic. For example, we have a lot that we can do in rural areas to mobilize Democrats and to push things so that we're not always being blown away in rural Virginia. There's one organization that I really admire called Rural Ground Game, founded in 2019, that is emphasizing long-term investment in Democratic Party operations in rural areas that unfortunately get short shrift because we're not going to see short-term results from our work there. We really have to work hard and be visible and be a presence in the community and organize on the ground the same way that we would in a big urban county like Fairfax County, getting out Democratic voters. A sustained effort in organizing rural voters will perhaps begin to move the needle for us long term.
So for Democrats to have that sort of long-term success, as you I think aptly described, the party is going to have to expand the range of voters that it can attract, demographically, geographically, etc.
We should always be expanding.
Mm-hmm. But it's easier said than done.
Easier said than done, indeed.
Okay. In your experience, is there a particular type of Democrat that has more success in doing that? Maybe in those rural areas or non-traditional Democratic areas?
I would have to defer on this, Russell, because my experience has been contained mostly to Fairfax County, with maybe just a short stint of work organizing in Loudoun, but again, the suburban part of Loudoun. So I'm not sure that I would be the most qualified person, but maybe I bring someone else on this show who can talk to you about that.
Or maybe what you said earlier about a good politician's ability to listen, about their ability to meet people where they are, works no matter where you are, be it urban or be it rural.
I think that's a very fair assessment, that some rules are universal.
We must take another short break, but stay with us for more of our conversation with Aaron Yohai on Inside Scoop.
Nice going, Spencer! I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We?
Go to the door, ask for the ball back. Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See ya. Remember me and you're well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi, it's Russell Brooks again, and I'm conducting today's show with our special guest, Aaron Yohai, Chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Aaron, if we could take it back to national politics for a moment. It was really distressing for so many Democrats to recognize that so many working class people, organized labor, now feel that they have more in common with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. Do you believe this is a major problem for Democrats? 2, are you seeing this on the local level? 3, is the party making efforts to address the situation?
Well, I would say absolutely it's a problem, and we have observed it. We are the party for working people. We are fighting for safer job sites. We're fighting for collective bargaining, for increased wages, and to protect existing jobs while expanding job opportunities for working people. And to see Republicans run away with their votes is disheartening. So we have work to do there. I think that goes hand in hand with the other challenges that we face of messaging on these important kitchen table values and issues that matter to folks in their wallets. So we need to take that message to voters more aggressively than ever before, I think. Here in Fairfax, we still have that struggle, but with even a different dimension, because again, with these federal job losses looming, I'm fearful for the impact to the region, and it goes beyond federal workers. Everybody is going to be impacted if we see serious job losses from the federal government in Northern Virginia. And that is going to turn businesses away from this area. It's going to hurt our quality of services, and we're going to have a big problem on our hands. So messaging these priorities to working people, to organized labor, that's where we gotta be.
Sure. Another area of concerns in the recent election seems to be where the Democrats still have an advantage among young people. Traditionally, Democrats take the approach that it can attract far more support among younger people than Republicans, that people tend to get more conservative and more Republican as they age, but at least while they're young and more, open to new ideas, they are more conducive to democratic politics. Is that changing?
Well, I'm going to show my own age here a little bit. At 30, I feel I have a lot less in common than I used to with people who are just coming into voting age. This is perhaps one of those situations, again, where we need to be meeting voters where they are. And Facebook and Twitter, that's not it anymore. We've got to be meeting people on TikTok and Twitch. And that's just one way that we can effectively reach younger voters. But we also need to be making sure that we're speaking to issues that matter to younger voters. And as I understand it, the specter of crippling student debt is still on the horizon for many. And that situation, despite the best efforts of the Biden administration, can still be much improved. Let's meet younger voters where they are and understand what their concerns are. Not being able to buy a house for longer than they'd hope, maybe not having a comfortable job waiting for them when they exit education and want to enter the workforce. These are the anxieties that are plaguing young people right now, as well as the question of the environment and what's going to be there for even younger generations. We need to effectively message on these issues and meet them where they are.
Speaking of communication, both campaigns, presidential campaigns, spent a fair amount of time trying some new and innovative approaches to meet people where they are, whether that was appearing on podcasts, whether that was utilizing influencers to advance campaign messages. Do you expect to see more of that, not just nationally, but maybe there's an equivalent on the state and local level? What are your thoughts?
I think we need to find that equivalent and fast. I think that we can and will see that nationally soon enough. I am keeping my eye on the current race for who the next Democratic National Committee chair will be, and I look to their leadership for how we can change the media environment in America. Locally, we should definitely be taking notes and seeing what we can do ourselves.
Mm-hmm. One of the maybe more successful aspects of the Harris-Walz campaign was the incredible enthusiasm and energy that they garnered among African American women in particular. They brought new people into party politics. How do you keep those African American women engaged?
That's a very interesting question. I must think about the issues that matter to African American women, and I'm thinking from a Virginia perspective. Historically, voting rights has been such an important issue, and we saw, especially just this past election, Governor Youngkin here in Virginia was talking about purging the voting rolls within days of the election. That's not speaking to a high interest in every vote matters, and Black women are on the forefront of that issue here in Virginia. I'm thinking about State Delegate Sia Price, who's the chair of the Privileges and Elections Committee, House of Delegates, has been instrumental in this area. I also know that healthcare is an issue that matters, and Black maternal health has been an issue of significant interest in the lead up to this year's session. And due credit to Democratic State Delegate Candy Munden King from Prince William County, who is leading the charge on that issue area. I think that we are moving in a strong direction there already, and we need to maintain that momentum and make sure that a lot of the newcomers to the party are having these issues addressed that they care about. It was enough for them to be enthusiastic for Kamala Harris, but we need them to stick around and understand that the battle is not over in Virginia.
Another concern seems to be, how do you reach the low propensity voter? And I don't think that's just a Democratic issue. I think all campaigns see that as maybe being the margin of difference, especially in these very, very tight races. How do you reach them? How do you motivate them? How do you get them to come out and actually vote? Is that one of your concerns as well?
I think that's always a concern. And when I think about this year's election and how our fundamentals were strong of knocking on doors and making sure people got out to vote, we still had far to go. It's maybe unfair to compare this year's results to 2020 because it's hard to create an environment more conducive to voter participation than a global pandemic and economic downturn. That will motivate voters like nothing else. But we have to replicate conditions for success for Democrats, and we can't always lean on the issues of the day being the strongest motivator. We need to, again, message to what voters want to hear and what tugs on their heartstrings and what makes them anxious for the future. That's where we need to be to tell them, we're here for you, these are our solutions, if you vote for us, we'll deliver.
Well, with regard to that messaging, a criticism, fair or unfair, is how Democrats tend to approach issues. I think I would hear like a James Carville or someone say that what the typical Democrat approach is to produce some 15 or 20 points paper on an issue, while the Republican typical approach is something simple, something that tugs on the heartstrings if you want, or appeals to your patriotism if you want, like Make America Great Again, or some other thing that's relatively snappy and easy to remember. Again, is it a fair criticism? And if it is a fair criticism, what's it going to take to get Democrats to maybe change their approach?
Well, I think that there is some truth to that statement, but it's not all that. I think that we can afford to show complexity and detail when we're being asked for what our plans are, and to show people what we're going to do for them in detail when the situation demands it. We should be ready for that. But we also need to be prepared with that 10-word answer, to borrow a phrase. Isn't that it? I mean, yeah, we have to sometimes engage in bumper sticker politics.
I would say maybe it's necessary to oftentimes engage in bumper sticker politics. If our audience is conducive to the 10-point plan or 20-point plan, that's all well and good.
And if they're not, we need to adapt.
But if they're not, there needs to be a different way of reaching them.
But we need to then understand what our audience is in any given situation, and that's the other half.
And that's the listening half. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, we just finished a presidential campaign. We're talking about the upcoming race for governor, and then we have to get ready for midterms. Your work never ceases, does it?
No, it does not. Year after year in Virginia, that's just the way things are here, more than anywhere else in the country except maybe New Jersey. We have high stakes elections every year, and we just have to keep on going because we have to believe that our hard work will reap benefits. And year after year we chip away at the barriers facing us.
Well, if you've been doing it for as long as you have, obviously you believe that it does produce benefits.
Absolutely I do. And after an election year like what we just had, it can be easy for me to be despondent and say, well, here we are again. But we've delivered for Virginia, and we will deliver again.
I'm sure you will. Well, we've run out of time, but I have to thank Aaron Yohai, chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, for his time. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you will come and join us again on Inside Scoop. And for the audience, let me thank you as well. Good night.